Hey guys, welcome back to the Thriving in Love podcast, the podcast that challenges the status quo so couples can thrive as their most authentic selves. Today on the show, we have Ashley Delbello, intuitive coach for women, and she helps them with all aspects of life, from your career to your personal life, to your marriage, to your self-love journey. Ashley, welcome. Thank you so much for being on my show. Again, I know we had technical difficulties the first time, but I'm actually really excited to dive in with you again.
Yes, thank you, Sana. Thank you. We did have some technical difficulties, but we are here and back, and I'm excited to have another conversation with you. So it'll be good.
The first time we kind of talked a lot about, leaving corporate and starting your own business. But today I actually want to dive into what do you do when you leave corporate America because you realize that money is not the most fulfilling thing. And I'm sure as entrepreneurs, we start our businesses because we're looking for something more than just financial gains.
Yeah.
So, what was your biggest motivation for starting your business? And has that shifted and evolved since you've been in this now for over 4 years?
Yes, and yes. Biggest motivation for starting my business is, well, and leaving corporate really was I was at a point where I was burnt out. And I had been in my career for 15 years. Plus, it just wasn't fulfilling me anymore. And I kind of woke up one day. I was like, there's got to be something more to life. It can't just be all about this work, 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 work.
Mhm.
And I'd probably been feeling that for the last like 5 years of my career, but a couple of years before I actually left is when I was really like, something's got to change. We've got to like be doing something different, and I've got to figure something else out. I didn't know what that was at the time when I left, but I knew that I was so burnt out. I was not fulfilled. I was searching for something more to life and how we were supposed to be living it. That drove me to really like, okay, I've got to do something different. I've got to change some things up, and I've got to figure this out. And,
Relatable.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And did it in a way that felt comfortable-ish. I wouldn't say totally comfortable, but did it in a way that was like made sense for me. Right. And so hired a coach to help me figure out what was next, planned for like how, because I was at that point where I was so burnt out, was like, I don't think I can figure this out. I was suffering from a lot of brain fog and low energy and exhaustion. It's like, I don't think I can figure this out while in another job. Right. And so I planned for that, saved for that, fortunately had a lot of savings from my corporate career that I was like, okay, I have a runway to like decompress and figure out like what's next for me, what's going to actually fulfill me, as well as bring in income and pay the bills and all of that.
And you were also getting married at the same time, right?
Yes. Yeah. 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 Timeline was left corporate career like August 31st of 2019, got married October 19th. So of that same year. So
Wow.
was also planning for a wedding. And also because I had started working with a coach, and I had originally just thought it was just to like help me figure out like what's next for my career. And it ended up to being so much more than that, and going on this whole personal growth journey, this whole healing journey. So I was in the middle of all of that as all of these big things were happening. So, yeah.
So, what was your husband's reaction to all of that during the time?
He took the conversation of like, I was like, look, I can't do this anymore. I've got to do something different. I've got to figure out something else for myself, and he had seen it for the past couple of years, and he knew I was just living a shell of my life. Obviously it impacted our relationship. Obviously it impacted, it was an impact on him. And so he was way more understanding than I thought he was going to be going into that conversation and having that conversation with him, because he's also him and I have different money backgrounds too. And he was like, I was afraid how he was going to like react to that piece and not having my income anymore, because he makes good money, but I have always been the breadwinner. He actually took that a lot more easier than I thought. And he was supportive, and he was like, look, as long as, you can pay your half of the mortgage and you can like keep that up, then he's like, it's fine. He's like, I see this. You need to do what you got to do for you. The healing journey and going through all of this personal growth, and then later becoming a coach and coaching other women through some of this, there was a little bit of tension created, to be honest, as I was growing and healing and changing. changing and in essence becoming, I don't want to say becoming a different person, but becoming more of myself. And we had been together for so much, for a long time before we got married. So as I was growing, it created some tension, right? I was becoming a lot more spiritual. I was becoming a lot more in tune with myself and speaking up for my needs and my wants and whatever. And my husband's a great guy. He's supportive, but it definitely created some tension as I was going
Same.
through that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the honesty because same. Like when I was starting to realize, like, I guess I was, and we all are always intuitive, but we're never like so aware of what that is,
Right.
especially if we're born with it and it just comes naturally to us. And I know for me, I thought everybody just thinks the way I do and acts the way I do and is the way I am.
Right.
And until I had the language for it and on my healing journey. And I was like, oh, I'm an empath. Oh, I absorb energy. Oh, I can read people's energy. Oh, I can tap into things that are underneath the surface level of what's
Right.
happening.
Right.
I know for me, like when I started realizing that, my husband's first reaction was basically like, I don't believe in any of that. Like, I don't know what's going, like, why are you talking about all this all of a sudden? And like, it sounds like similar for you. So, what was that journey like? And were there any like boundaries that you had to set with him while you were learning, unlearning, journeying through this spiritual path?
Definitely. I'm like, let's think back to all. Definitely boundaries had to be set, and definitely my experience, fortunately somebody early on, I had gone to a retreat probably like a month or two after I left corporate, and it was with, people who had been in personal growth and development and were on their own journeys too and had been for a bit, and this was coming up for me very much so, and I was like, what do I do? I feel like I'm growing and he's not, even though I'm going to caveat that with everybody grows at their own pace. And that is something I've learned, right?
But yeah, I also started that way thinking, yeah,
Yeah.
the same exact thing. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm growing, he's not. I'm going to outgrow him.
Right. Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of women do when then they start this down this path. And it's not necessarily something we have to be afraid of. We can navigate it. We can work through it with our partner or not. Right. And so the person at that retreat told me, they're like, he's either going to come along with you or not. It might look different from how you're going, and it might be at a different way and a different speed and all of the things, but he's either going to come along or he's not going to. And that hit me hard at first. I was like, well, shit. But then I was able to wrap my mind around it and accept it. Like, okay, I am doing this for myself, and I would love for him to come along too. He either is or he isn't, and I can't
And
force him.
it's not in your control.
Right. Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. That and getting to that point of acceptance and peace. And I think that is the moment where you truly do set love free. And I think that's a very necessary component of healing this codependency that I think society has taught us as the norm of, oh, your partner's your other half, they fulfill you, yada,
Right.
yada. And it's like, I know for me, that was like the moment where my husband actually got to be free to be who he is. And I got to be free for who I am. And we got to really see each other without our fears, shame,
Yeah.
guilt, judgment.
Yeah. Yes. Yes to all of that. I can relate because especially like letting each of you be free,
Mm,
right? Without the judgment and with acceptance. The piece I will add to that is through that, you get to set your boundary of like, what are you willing to tolerate and what are you willing to not? If you're looking at it with pure love and pure love for yourself and pure love for them, like, what are you willing to tolerate and what are you not willing to tolerate?
so
And that's
powerful.
how my boundaries started to form too, right?
Yeah.
With him, how we spoke to each other, what I expressed to him,
Yeah.
and it wasn't always easy, right? This wasn't like a clear cut path,
No.
but
Lots of big, messy arguments, lots of tears, lots of, are we better off on our own? Are we
right.
just forcing something and trying too hard?
Yeah.
And then realizing that at the end of the day, it really is about not falling into the trap of this black or white mentality. Like, just because we're going through a rough patch right now doesn't mean it's the end all be all, especially in this day and age where it's so easy to just get back on dating apps and start swiping again.
Right. Right. Well, and especially like you were talking about earlier, the mentality or what we've been taught that our partner is supposed to complete us and be our other half and all of the things, but we are complex human beings. Not one person is going to fulfill us.
Yeah.
Right? We like yes, my husband is there for, certain
So much.
things.
So
It's
much.
so
Yeah.
much. But then there's other people I turn to for other things in my life, whether it's my business, my work, or just to like go out and be free and do whatever the freak I want to, right?
Beautiful.
But
Yeah.
unlearning that was key to my marriage is and still is key to my marriage, and knowing that just because we're together doesn't mean he's going to fulfill every aspect of me, and he's also, and just because we're having a fight and going through certain things and everything isn't perfect all the time doesn't mean we're a failure and aren't meant to be or whatever it is, right?
Oh, so much good there. How do you balance that sense of needing freedom with being in a relationship that does require us to give up a little bit of freedom?
Right. Yeah, that is such a good question. And it's also been through trial and error because I don't know about you, but I am super independent. And fortunately, my husband is too, but like, I need to be free. I need to be able to do what I want to do without having to
Yeah.
check on with somebody every single second or whatever. Of course, I bring him in on things that makes, whatever considerations and stuff. But
Autonomy, I think, is a really important thing to
yeah,
me.
yeah,
And
exactly.
sometimes we don't have to like fill each other in on every single little thing, you
Right,
know?
right.
And I think there's like an element of desire that gets to build when you do have some things that are just yours and some things that are just his. And
Right.
that element of mystery for us, it's really exciting with Scorpio and we love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I'm an Aquarius, so I do love the mysterious and weird too. Um,
My husband's an Aquarius, so yeah, he
oh,
definitely loves that too.
perfect, perfect. It's knowing what is really important for me and then knowing what I need and desire for that to
Mm,
create that freedom, right? Like travel is a really big thing that's important for me, especially at our beginning of our relationship. I used to travel all the time with my girlfriends and stuff, and he was like, why are you traveling all the time? What are you running
yeah.
away from? Why can't you? And I was like, no, this fills me up and gives
Mm,
me energy and life to be able to travel around the world and all of that and whatever. So I brought him to experience international travel, and that he was like, oh, now I see why you do this. So that was like one thing that helped. But then
yeah.
also beyond that, like I love traveling with him, but I also need to do my own thing too, right? And so it's figuring out my needs and desires and communicating those to him
Yeah.
and finding a way to communicate in a way that's like doesn't I don't
That
know
doesn't
how to.
hurt his feeling.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
The compassion, right? And when was the first time that you did go on a solo trip without him?
I mean, early in our relationship, because I was just like,
Setting the precedent.
I'm
Yeah.
doing these things. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
already the precedence, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was doing that quite often. And look, and there came a point where because he started to say something about it, a few years into our relationship, I started getting very anxious to talk to anytime my girlfriends would invite me on a trip and anxious to like talk to him about it. And I was also like gatekeeping the like trips that I was being invited to in term and not telling him about it and being like
Yeah.
not and
Yeah.
so I would just act like I would tell my girlfriends no I can't go and I wouldn't even talk to Mike about it.
Wow.
And because I was like just so anxious about.
Preemptively thinking about what his response is going to be, and you were just like, not worth the conversation.
Yeah, yeah. But I had to move through that because then resentment came in, like me not being able to travel, that like it has an impact on me, right? Like I know that's what fills my cup. It comes back to communication and being brave and being like,
Mm,
look, travel
yeah.
is like, and I made it an analogy like he's a musician. So I was like, you know what music is like for you playing your guitar and
Mm,
doing and being able to be on stage and all of that. That's what travel is like for me.
beautiful.
And I need that more in my life.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and look, and I was honest. I was like, I haven't told you about some of the trips I've been invited on because I was anxious about like what was going to happen,
Yeah.
the conversation. And he was like, oh, I don't want you to not talk to me about that stuff, right? He's like, yes, I have like the travel was a like thing, but now this makes more sense, whatever, right? Like, so we had like that communication has led to such much more open conversation around something, one of my desires, right?
What would you recommend somebody who maybe like say all their finances are combined, right? It sounds like you guys had like your own finances. You
Yeah,
had your joint account and then you had your own.
yeah,
Yeah.
we have the joint account for like the mortgage and homeowners
Yeah.
insurance, those
But like
things.
your money is yours, his is
Yeah,
his. If you
exactly.
want to go travel, like it's not a financial barrier. But
Right.
what about people like say they have kids or they share finances and now traveling isn't as simple as like, oh, just sharing, hey, I'm gonna go, I'm spending my own money. We don't have to deal with logistics as much.
Right.
What would you recommend for people like that?
That is a really good question. And like a lot of my clients have to have those
Exactly. That's why I'm
conversations.
asking.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not,
I'm like, I
some
don't
of
know
them
what to
are,
tell them.
I know, right? Some of them are similar to how my husband and I have it set up and they've, kept their finances separate, but most of
Same.
them, no, they haven't. And they also
Yeah.
have kids in the mix too. And so that's an added like thing. With my clients who do that, I mean, there's so many different options. One, it's just having a conversation with your partner. Also encouraging your partner to like set aside money for him to do something for himself too, right?
Mm.
And so one of my clients, they do that, right? Like she's like, I need this for myself or whatever. And like also, cool, I'm gonna take this money out of the funds to use this, but like, what about you? What are you gonna do with this portion of your funds, right? So
Beautiful.
it's like creating kind of like some balance there to say,
Yeah.
being like, you go do this with this portion and I'll go do this with this portion of it, right?
Yeah. And I
Um,
love that because, yes, it may push out the plan to go travel or what have you a little further
right.
away, but it's so fair. It's so just. And then you can do it guilt free. Because I also know
Right.
people who go and they're like, oh, my husband's taking care of the kids. And this and that. I didn't even get to enjoy myself because I
Yep.
just felt guilty the whole time.
Right, right, right. But if you counter it with like, well, I know in a month he's going to do his own thing, right? And I'll be
Yeah.
home with the kids and whatever, right? And I think, I'll speak to this just quickly too. We also get to do things for ourselves. And I know like it's hard to leave kids and I know it's hard to be like, oh my God, I'm going to put all this burden on him,
Yeah.
but you more than make up for it when you're home and you
Yeah.
also get to do things for yourself too. That is like my big thing is when we nurture ourselves, we're also nurturing our loved ones and our relationships and our life and our work and all of that. And that you doing that for yourself feeds back into that
Can you
too.
talk a little bit deeper on that of like what do you feel when you do these things for yourself and how does that result in more love, more intimacy, more joy in
Yeah.
your everyday life?
So many different things come to mind. I just come much. I'm able to get out of my day to day, and I come alive. Right when I travel, or when I'm going at a retreat with other women, or whatever it is. Right, I just come
Yeah.
alive. That being more alive and coming back energized and in love with myself and in love even more with my partner, of course that's going to create like good stuff coming out, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to come back and it's like they're like resets for me. I'm going to come back and see the joy and the magic and everything in the everyday life.
And
And I think
so much more gratitude,
yes,
right?
yes, so much more gratitude.
Men listening, just know if you want your woman to be more in love with you, just give her a little more freedom to do what
Yeah.
she desires to do.
Yes, the space, the freedom, like that's like
Yeah.
the best thing you can give somebody. With that, too, like both my husband and I work from home. We see each other 24/7, right? So getting
A
away
lot.
from each other, even if it's like the Monday night softball games that I do, is like
True. Yeah.
good for us, right? Like,
Hmm.
so those trips that I'm taking, that's good for us. I actually then miss him, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I do love him. Not that I, well, whatever.
No,
But
I get it. Yes.
like, I
Yes.
do love him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I feel that all the time. Like, as much as I love time away from him, my favorite part about it is also the whole coming back home and being like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I missed you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
It's the
Exactly.
best.
Right. It gives us the opportunity to actually miss them. And like, again, more gratitude, more love comes
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
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 Beautiful. So, how often do you go on your adventures?
That is a good question. This year hasn't been as much as I usually would like, but well, actually, that's not a lie. I've done some trips this year.
Because you
So
just got back from the retreat,
yeah,
right?
I just
Yeah.
got back to the retreat last month, and
Yeah.
I think, and I went some, which last month was July. So as we're recording this, and then I went with my cousin to Mexico in April, and so I
Fun.
try to like. Ideally, it would like to be something like once a quarter. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
not that often, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes it's less and it kind of, but I know for myself it's once a quarter. And some of
Yeah.
those, and again, like my husband and I are going to go on a trip next month in September together. So it's also can include, obviously, I want to include my husband on some of these too, but
Totally.
ideally it would be like once a quarter doing something like this.
Does your husband have a corporate job or does he
No,
also work for himself?
he also works for himself, so
Okay.
it's
More
easier for us.
flexibility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, because
Um,
my husband has a traditional corporate job, so he only gets his like 2 weeks a year on
right.
vacation. And I'm like, well, I'll go on a vacation with you for those 2 weeks. We're going to Japan in 2 weeks. So we're really excited.
Awesome.
But I'm like you too, where it's like I still need to sprinkle in more here
Yeah.
and there for myself
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, when we first started, actually up until COVID, my husband's schedule was like that too. It was really
Yeah.
hard for him to take time off. And so that was when I was having a lot of the tension being like, I need to travel and I've
Yeah.
got flexibility. And I know you don't, but this is also why I need to go with other people or my
Yeah.
girlfriends or whatever.
Has anyone in your life, whether it's family or friends, made you feel any sort of way when you do go travel alone without him? Do they ask any questions?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, and yes. I think some of it may be made up in my head, but some of it has also been like directly asked and like, oh,
Thank you for sharing that. That even though you're so embodied in wanting this and needing this and knowing that about yourself, you still have those thoughts too.
yeah, oh, of course, right?
Mm,
Like I think we all will. And even as we continue to work on ourselves and grow,
yeah,
those thoughts are going to come
we're still
in no
human.
matter what. We're still human. They're still going to come in. They may come in less,
Yeah,
and I have the tools to reset and
turn the
reframe them.
volume down. Yeah,
Exactly, right? Change the channel. Um, all of those lovely analogies, but they still come in. I am still human. Um, and I even still like create those in my like, what are people thinking?
yeah.
And oh, I must be a like bad
Bad
wife
wife.
because
Mm,
I want to go off by myself and do these things, right?
yeah.
But yeah, definitely learned to quiet that over the years.
What are some practical things that you do when those thoughts start popping up?
I mean, some of it's like literally just telling myself like it's okay for me to have desires and needs and wants and to
Yeah.
go out and travel. It
Hmm.
also comes back to like what we were saying earlier, like my husband, no one person is meant to be like be
You're
all end all
everything.
everything to
Mhm.
me, right? And so of course I'm going to want to go travel either by myself or with my girlfriends or with my family or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Like it's okay that
Yeah.
I'm
But it takes
doing
so
this.
much willpower, or I don't can't think about the word what the word is, but like detaching from that spiral
Hmm.
and then stepping into that reparenting role
Yeah.
and assuring the spiral thoughts that no, it's okay. Like you're allowed to have desires. It's
Right.
okay. Like so how do you create that separation between like that ego self and that higher self?
Meditation,
Yeah.
breath work, getting back into my body. I'm all about getting like slowing things down and just getting into our bodies. Our body
Yeah.
knows how to transmute energy and process
Mm,
things that maybe don't make sense in our head. Anytime I can just slow down and breathe,
yeah.
or just, I have learned how to just be able to sit in my body and slow down
Mm,
and
beautiful.
whether it's a 10-minute meditation or a 10-minute breath work or just staring out the window and looking
Yeah.
at a beautiful tree outside. And look, at the beginning when I was going through all of this and learning all this, I had a coach and a mentor and a guide, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody talking to somebody else. And even if you don't have a coach or a mentor or whatever, even talking to
Someone
somebody
you
else who is
trust.
supportive, exactly, who you trust and can hold that space for you, and just getting out these feelings and these thoughts that are coming up for you, that can help you reset and reframe too.
Yeah. Beautiful. Are there any like gender roles that you guys had in the beginning of your marriage that you also like on this journey of self-discovery and realizing how like you prefer freedom and autonomy and things like that? Are there any situations where you had to have conversation with your partner on those, like cooking, cleaning, or
Yeah, anything household related.
yeah, like household stuff? Like how do you guys balance that with two people that are entrepreneurs also?
Good question. We have sunk into roles. It's not perfect, but he does the laundry. I think we still need to have a conversation about it, to be honest. He does the laundry, but I'm the one who's folding it. I think folding it takes up
It's the
much more
harder part.
effort than doing it. So we're still working on that one. But
Yeah,
there's like things that we split up. If I cook, he cleans up, and vice versa. If he
yeah.
cooks, I clean up. And so we've had conversations about that, or I'll try to prompt a conversation around like, look,
Hmm.
can you help me do this? Or while I do this, can you do this? We've been together for years now, so it's gotten into a groove with like,
Yeah,
he does this part of the household stuff, I do that. Like he always vacuums the couches in the living room floor and all of that. So
yeah.
cool.
It sounds like it's pretty 50-50 around
Yeah,
household stuff.
I think as much as we can be without, because gender bias is still a thing, right? Like
Yeah,
the woman
the programming.
still
Hmm.
there's still that programming on both sides, right?
Yeah,
I'm probably still doing more, but we've gotten as close to 50-50 as we can, right?
yeah. Also, I don't even know if it's programming in our household anymore, but more so like this just comes naturally to me because I'm better at it, so I just prefer to do it. Like I'm a better
Right.
chef. I cook better food and I
Right.
like to enjoy good food. So I'm
Right.
just gonna cook.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah,
there's stuff like that that's still like, I'm in charge of like taking care of all the mortgage getting paid and all of that.
yeah.
I'm more on top of that stuff than he is. So I
Hmm.
just have taken it over because I don't want to pay late payments. So, like,
Oh my gosh, no way. That's the
yeah.
worst. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. So then, how has your definition of success changed since you have become an entrepreneur? Because it goes back to like what we were saying earlier about, we leave corporate because we realize that money isn't the end all be all. And not to say that we don't want money when we do begin
Right.
our entrepreneur journey, that money is important, but like, what are some other ways that you find fulfillment other than financial gain?
In my business,
I guess in life, yeah.
with my business and leaving corporate, having, there's a transition period of like building your business and income, like not being like it was when it was like getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, right? I've really, for me, have had to dig deep into like the why I'm doing this. And
Mm,
that was easy at the beginning because it was new and exciting. And I'm like starting my business and I love this. And over time you can get stuck into the like, there's administrative stuff with running a business and there's like stuff
mhm,
that's not fun and you're growing through a lot and you're healing through a lot and things come up and you're like, what the fuck, I didn't even know that was a thing for me. Right. And so coming back to why I'm doing it, coming back to service, coming back to like, oh my god, I'm changing lives with what I'm doing, which is
yeah,
really fucking cool. I think it's sometimes easy to forget that, but I keep like a running list of my client results and notes that they've sent me and all of that to be like, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing this. And this is so much more important than any type of financial
mm,
gain. Of course, I still want and desire money. I
yeah.
want to do big things in this world and I love my travel,
Travel
right?
requires money. Yeah.
Exactly. But being able to tap back into the why I went down this path in the
Yeah.
first place. And it's not just even about the service and my clients. Of course it is. There's a purpose there and that gives me fulfillment, but it's also for myself,
Mm,
right? Like
yeah.
I wasn't happy before and that
Hmm.
money is not the only definition of success, right? And I've learned that now, but growing up, it was just like that was the definition of success: the title, the money, keep climbing the corporate ladder, all of that. But
Yeah.
now it's like, no, it's not that. Actually, my own happiness and how I'm actually feeling, and then
And growing,
and
right?
growing, yeah, and putting some good stuff out into the world.
Yeah.
That's what success is to me right now.
Wow.
So it's coming back to that time and time again. It's not always easy, but
Hmm.
yeah.
freaking drop. That was so good. Yes, exactly. And I love what you said that like it was money and then it was impact. And then you said a third part of it of the self. Can you dive a little bit deeper on like what you mean by that?
Over these last several years, I have really come to know that our connection with ourselves, our relationship with ourselves, our love for ourselves is really the foundation and where everything and from which everything else flows. And we're taught differently. We're taught the opposite of that. We're taught so many different things. When you have such a deep relationship with yourself, you feel fucking good.
Yeah.
And you know that you can navigate anything, right? You trust
Mhm.
yourself. You have confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
Even when it's like shit's hitting the fan, you can be
Like
like,
true self-actualization,
yeah, yeah,
becoming a true like sovereign being.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And
And
then
it's,
you're so right. Everything else is like a byproduct of that.
yeah.
You're
And I,
obviously going to create an impact because you're so embodied in your authenticity that it can't help but inspire others, not by you trying to find the perfect hook and perfect filter or perfect outfit for your content,
right.
but simply by just turning on your phone and sharing what you have on your heart in that moment.
Yeah. 100%. Because people feel that. That's an energy, right?
Mm. Yeah. And then, of course, once they feel that energy, they're going to want to pour into your containers, your offerings, because they want more of that. They want to be inspired by it. They want to know how they can also get to that point. And that is, for me, the whole point of doing the work that we do.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Because so many of my clients are like, oh, I want to create an impact. How do I inspire people? How do I motivate people? How do I transform people? I'm like, you do it by transforming yourself.
It starts with you. Everything starts with you.
And it stays with you, I think. The journey never stops, I think, of just like returning to center, growing, evolving as a being. And
Yeah.
then you just tap into that collective consciousness so that whatever you are feeling inspired to share is usually exactly what somebody else needs to hear
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we are all one.
Yes. We all are
Mm.
one. We all are connected. Yeah. I agree. Like it is usually what somebody else wants to hear. It's usually also something that you need to hear for yourself too, or something you
Oh,
just like
always.
learned or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
good.
love it. Okay, so then what are you guys working on now, like in your marriage? Is there anything that you guys are like actively trying to improve to the next level, or what's active in your marriage right now?
What is active in our marriage right now? I think right now, both of us, just with this year, we've both been growing through things ourselves, but also like dealing with, financial stuff has been like, oh, this has been a little bit more uncertain than it normally is. And so creating big feelings, right? And
Yeah,
so learning how to work through that, learning how to be accepting of like, where he is with that and vice versa and he being
yeah.
accepting like where I am. And so I think that's like the biggest thing that's active right now is just like, cool, we're here and we're in this together, but we also both have like different feelings about it and navigate it differently. And
How do
so
you lean more into acceptance when your partner isn't bringing in the number that you need in order to feel safe?
that is a very good question. It again comes back to me, right? Like that autonomy that I have over myself, right? And I don't know why the thumbs up is
It
coming up.
likes it.
It likes it. It's fine. It's good. Mic drop again. But
So many.
and my own practices, knowing that okay, this is what I need for me to feel safe.
Mhm.
And for me, that's I need to do my morning practices. I need to do my journaling. I need to connect into communities and people that can hold space for this or that I can just talk to about it. That is not my husband. So it all comes back to me. We all have our own choices. And of course, yes, communicating that, but that acceptance starts with coming back to yourself and then doing the practices that I know that it will ground me and center me and then being able to look at it through another light, right? And being like, okay, I'm accepting where we are right now. Doesn't mean I have to love it and doesn't
Yeah.
mean I can't want more,
Hmm.
but also like, how
Like,
does it serve me? How does it serve the situation to just create more suffering around it? Right. And to create more
so good.
anxiety and tension and whatever around it. Right. It doesn't help the situation.
No. And it causes an energy drain in your partner. And then that actually you're adding to the problem.
Yeah.
And then they don't feel inspired and excited. And money is energy, right? You drain their
Right.
energy, they're not going to be able to bring in more money.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
No. And I think for me is like treating your partner how you want to be treated in that situation.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
empathy is like
Right. Yeah.
so big. It goes
Empathy
so
and
far.
compassion, right? It's like, yeah, it's taking that step back and being able to see it from another perspective or from their perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a fun conversation. Like I feel like we went so much deeper than last time. So I'm actually really happy the
You
universe
recorded.
for
Yes.
some reason made us do this again. I feel like this is exactly what I wanted to talk about when it comes to balancing not just entrepreneurship and marriage, but more importantly, personal growth and self-actualization and growing in love and
Yeah.
not just
Not growing apart or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. How can my audience find you? How can they work with you?
So you can find me on Instagram at Coach Ashley Delbello. That's where I hang out a lot. Or you can visit my website to learn more, and that's just www.ashleydelbello.com. And I'm
Amazing.
sure you'll put it in the show notes. So yeah.
I will put all of the links in the show notes. And thank you so, so much once again for being on the show today.
Yeah. Thank you, Senna.